Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
How's it going? My name is Elias. I just before we get started, just want to let you know that we do record all of our consultations, just so that way, if there's any information that you need from them, you can look back to see if there's anything that you need. But that was all in the form and everything as well.
Okay.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and we can get started. You can let me know who we're here for today, what you guys are trying to work on, where you're having some issues, anything like that.
Okay, so Nova is around a year and a couple months old. Her birthday is in April.
Okay.
What we struggle the most with is walking her, and she is aggressive towards other dogs.
Okay. Okie dokie. And then when you're walking her, like what does the walk look like? What type of leash or anything like that do you use?
I use a harness, and
Okay.
she usually just like pulls a lot, and like if she sees other people or like an animal, she tries to run, and like she's strong.
Okay.
So
Okie dokie. And then you said she's aggressive. Like, what can you like speak about a scenario where you might have noticed that?
So my mom took her out to use the restroom and it was snowing. She
Hmm.
only used her collar though. She didn't put her on a harness like we usually do. And there's a pit bull that looks exactly like her that was walking around the same time that my mom was leaving the house. And
Hmm.
she ended up dragging my mom like with the snow and she was like this close to getting the other dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, have you guys seen any of that when you're walking with her?
No, because if I see a dog, I usually try to avoid going towards that area, so I usually just go around.
Okay. Um, what does she normally do if you were to let her get like close to a dog? Like, what does that look like?
She hasn't really had any like sort of communication with another dog except for my other dog that I have. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then she's fine with that other dog that you have?
Uh, yes. I mean, she plays rough with her. My other dog is around 7 years old, so she doesn't really want to play with her. So she kind of gets annoyed and they just start like working at
Okay.
each other, kind of.
Okay. Um,
Oh, with Santi
oh,
too. Yeah.
okie dokie. For the aggression, I would be hesitant to call it like full on aggression just because we don't really know like what she would do.
Mhm.
Um, so sometimes a lot of things that look aggressive can also be reactivity, which is something we would also want to address, but it's a slightly different thing. So if it were more like aggression, like she would 100% like attack this dog, like if she got to the dog. Whereas more reactive dogs can still like stare at a dog, bark at a dog, even chase after them. But it'd be more of a case of like, what would she do if like that confrontation were to actually arise? Are there any like moments that she's had with other dogs or people where you notice her getting uncomfortable and like could you explain like what she does normally?
I would say mostly like jump on them
Mm.
and
Well, what do you mean by her getting uncomfortable?
Yeah, like so some signs of like getting uncomfortable or reactivity or even possibly aggression could be like very stiff, mouth closed, curling the lips, growling, the hackles on her back coming up, like the fur, um, stuff like that, where there's a lot of tension.
Okay.
mm,
Mm.
well, she really just like stands her ground. I'm not sure if a lot of other really dogs do that often, but her tail's
Yeah.
like up and like her mouth is just straight on and like her feet are just very her like neck come like her chest comes up. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Okie dokie. And then when she had that incident where she pulled your mom down,
Yeah.
um, what does your mom like? Did she describe anything that Nova did, or was it just like out of nowhere?
She usually does that. So when we take her out, especially when it gets dark out, she's very like uncomfortable, I guess you can say, and she just charges as soon as we open the door, and she
Oh,
kind of
okay.
drags us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she ended up seeing the dog, so she just like went over to the dog, and like I said, she was very close to the other dog, but the owner ended up picking her dog up, and well, she didn't get close to him.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, at the very least, it sounds like some like reactivity. Basically, she sees this dog and she just immediately wants to react to it. Um, Not necessarily saying it couldn't be aggression, it could, but without, I guess, like more information or like seeing the dog, then I would probably be better off calling it reactivity, which is something that we would still address. Um, as far as the walking with the pulling and all that,
Mhm.
a harness is technically like okay as far as like it's not going to uh be like damaging necessarily to any training, but harnesses do promote something called opposition reflex.
Mhm.
So what that is anytime a dog is going to feel pressure going against them, their natural instinct is to want to push into the pressure. So
Okay.
it's kind of promoting pulling because it's just causing her to want to pull more. And it's also on the strongest part of her body where she has the most leverage.
Yeah.
Whereas, like certain things that are on the neck, she's not as strong up there. But when it's in the harness form, she has her whole body. She can put her weight behind it. So,
Okay.
especially in scenarios where like she's going to be pulling hard for any reason, sometimes a harness can feel more secure, but it's actually amping her up like mentally more. That's why harnesses are used a lot of the time for like sled dogs or for police dogs when they're doing any work where they're pulling them back, just because it amps them up more. It kind of promotes what they're doing.
Okay.
Um, so not to say that you're doing anything wrong, but it's just sometimes a harness can make things more difficult if you're trying to address like the pulling specifically.
I thought it
Um,
was because when she was 7 months old, I went to PetSmart to get her trained, and she said a harness was gonna work out for her. So
oh, okay.
that's
Yeah,
what her.
I mean, sometimes like it can like in a way help because it's not putting a lot of pressure on their throat if that's something you're
Yeah.
worried about right away. But once they're past the like small puppy stage where you can very easily move them around, then it's
Mhm.
kind of like they're going to be the ones that are kind of in control of the leash the whole time, just because that's a comfortable part of their body. And like when they pull, their brains just like pull harder. So um, it's just not going to help you if your goal is to have her just not pulling at all.
Mhm.
Um, does that make sense or any questions with that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, as far as the like reactivity and stuff like that that she has with these other dogs and everything, has there any been like has there ever been any issues in the home with her or anything that you've noticed like with people even or with have you ever had any other dogs like around the house?
Mm. So no other dogs, but people, yes. I mean, she's mostly just very hyper and energetic towards other people. She gets very excited, and like that lasts like a really long time. She's always jumping or she's always bothering them, especially with kids. She just
Hmm.
wants to be near them like 24/7.
Okay. Um, and when she's doing the jumping and stuff like that, is that something you guys care about, or like you try and get that to stop, or what do you do?
Yeah, we're trying to get her to stop.
Okay. Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that can also be addressed, just the general excitement, like if you're having guests over and everything.
Yeah.
Um, just because there's a few ways that we can handle that. As far as the the walking and everything is concerned, that's going to be pretty straightforward once we get into the training, and then also a lot of uh, the extra distractions, like with the other smaller animals or dogs, can also easily be addressed with the way that we do our heel command.
Mhm.
So before I get too much into that, are you familiar with the concept of like physicality with dogs and everything like that?
No.
Okay. So basically, physicality is just a way to describe the communication that dogs have versus where you and me can speak to each other. Dogs have to use physicality to speak to each other because they don't have language or anything. So a very popular video on YouTube, there's a bunch of popular videos, but a very popular one is there's a mother Korean retriever going into a playpen with all of her puppies, and they're all like really excited, really amped up to see her, and they're jumping all over her, but they're just too much. They're bothering her. So what she does is she goes for a nip on one of them, and then they all kind of back up, calm down. They know what that means, and they wait for mom to give them permission to come up and eat and say hi and everything. So from a very young age, they're learning that this bite that mom's going to do is going to be their way of understanding, like, stop what you're doing. I don't like what you're doing here. Same thing, even as an adult, like with other dogs, if Nova were to go up and try and take this other dog's toy, that other dog is probably going to try and bite Nova, and then Nova is going to be like, okay, I don't want to take that dog's toy because I don't want to get bitten. So that's the general concept of physicality with dogs. And we see this pop up in many different forms. So have you guys ever seen any of Cesar Millan's show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know how he does like the touch on the side and then he makes the noise and everything?
Hmm.
So that's what he's basically doing, is just adding physicality, but with his hand there. So he's doing what we would call like a touch correction. And that is introducing the same idea as like a dog bite, just on a different scale, a different degree. And that's usually when he's trying to get the dog to either calm down, or he's trying to tell the dog that this is something that they shouldn't have done, or trying to snap them out of like a moment where just like they're being too reactive or too energetic or something. So that same concept applies to a lot of training tools that we use. For example, like the gentle leader or the slip lead are all introducing that pressure, just in different ways. And same thing goes for more advanced tools like the prong collar or the e-collar. They're all, at least for the prong collar and the e-collar, they're trying to mimic a dog bite in some degree. So that way you're able to add that degree of physicality, but not have to do it in such a way where it could be risky for people who aren't like professional trainers like Cesar Millan. So he uses his hand because he kind of knows what to do. It would be risky for us to recommend for you guys to use your hand in these situations. So that's where we get to like the prong collar and the e-collar. With the prong collar, that's a really good way of introducing pressure initially, because of the fact that it mimics a dog bite. It can reach certain levels that we may not be able to just on our own if you're just using the harness or something. But at the same time, there are a few downsides that we kind of don't like, to where we prefer the e-collar more. Those downsides being are, one, if you don't have the leash in your hand, or if you don't have like the prong collar on her and the leash like clipped ready to go, then the tool basically becomes useless. So, for example, let's say your mom is outside with Nova again, she accidentally drops the leash. Well, now we can't use the prong collar anymore. We don't have recall. We don't have anything. So that's one downside. Another one is that it's not very easily transferable. So the way that I might use the prong collar is going to be different from the way that either one of you use the prong collar, which is going to be different than your mom. Three is that with the prong collar, sometimes it can cause a little bit more confrontation than is like desired, especially with people who are not necessarily trying to become full-on dog trainers themselves. So that's stuff that we can work through, but it's just not preferred. So it's very easy for Nova to tell, like, okay, the prong collar, this is happening, but it's connected to the leash, and mom or dad or whoever had the leash. And then she can have that confrontation with you, like, okay, mom's the one that's doing this. So It's just something that is not necessarily worth it in the moment all the time. So any questions so far with that before I move into more e-collar stuff?
No.
Okay. So that's kind of where we get to the e-collar. And with the e-collar, are you familiar with how it works?
No.
Okay. Have either one of you ever been to a physical therapist?
No.
No.
Okay. You might have seen it in a show then. If not, it's fine. They basically have this thing that they put the patches on your muscle and they send stimulation to like activate the muscle, usually for people who have like issues where they need it like worked out in a certain way. It's the same technology as that, except it's just in a collar format. So then in the same way that you would use it in the doctor's office where they have levels and they go up and down based on what the person is telling them, then we would do the same thing based on how the dog is handling everything. If it's too much, then we lower it. If they don't feel it at all, we turn it up a little bit until we find the sweet spot to where everything's making sense to the dog. With that as well, we can kind of get rid of all the issues that I just mentioned with like the prong collar. And one, it's very easily transferable. So no matter what the number is, you know, if the e-collar is set to 30 for me is going to be the same as 30 for you, same as 30 for your mom, for whoever uses it. So she's not going to learn separate rules for separate people. It's just like, this is just it. This is just how you act with everybody. Then, since it's wireless and everything, it has up to a 1 mile range. And with that, you know, let's say an emergency happens where, like, for example, the same situation with your mom, the dog's like running off. Maybe she lets go of the leash because she doesn't want to get dragged down to the ground. But now she's able to still make recall happen if she needs to. But I mean, even ideally before then, we would address her running after the dog as well. But that's just an example. Like, for example, if she were to get scared by something, you drop the leash, you still have a way to make recall happen. And then lastly, it's very non-confrontational because she's not able to understand like, oh, this is a collar on my neck, going to the remote, and then mom has the remote. It doesn't make sense that way to her. So let's say she's doing something that she shouldn't be. It's almost like just something in the world is telling her like she just shouldn't do that. It's not mom or dad or whoever. That's just something she shouldn't do. It feels not good to do that. So those are kind of like all the downsides of prong collar taken care of, and then it's much easier to introduce pressure and everything like that as well. One more thing I'll add is that with the e-collars that we use more like higher end e-collars, so where they have 127 levels. And with an e-collar that you might look at maybe on like Amazon or something where they go from 1 to 10, their 10 is the same as our 127. It's just we have a lot more numbers in between to be able to find what's going to work for your dog, like specifically, rather than like 5 being too much, 4 being too low, but then now there's nowhere in between. Well, now we have 50, 40, and 10 numbers in between, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, that's my watch. Any questions so far with the e-collar or with anything like that?
No.
No.
Okay. So that kind of moves us towards the training. The way that we would go about implementing the e-collar, no matter what program you do, the first thing we go over is the heel command. And our heel command is very strict, just because we want it to be very clean and have it be like the most important thing to the dog in that moment. So when Nova is to be in heel, she should be on your left side, her right shoulder in line with your left leg. She shouldn't pass you, go behind you, go to your right side. And then when you come to a stop, she should go into an automatic sit until like you release her and you're done with the heel command. So that's very structured and a lot of stuff for her to keep track of, both physically to like stay at your side and then mentally, because she needs to always know like, Okay, where's mom going, or are we stopping? Okay, I need to sit down. So since it's so much for her to think about, what can happen is that sometimes a lot of the extra behavior stuff on the walks can either improve or go away. So maybe like a squirrel runs by, and let's say it would normally distract her. Well, now she has so much to focus on with the heel command, she might not even notice that squirrel. Same thing with some other dogs. If normally she's just like kind of interested, maybe she's in the heel command now and she doesn't look at all. So that's kind of like an indirect way that a lot of the more minor distractions on the walk can just be addressed just by focusing specifically on the heel command. And then that would also give her that basis of understanding that she's the one that's kind of in control of the pressure of the e-collar. So if she's moving with the pressure, then it's good, no e-collar. If she's going against it, where she's trying to run off to see this dog or this squirrel, then the pressure kicks in and then she's back at your side. Any questions with that?
No.
Okay. Then the reactivity stuff is going to be a little bit more specific, just because that's more of a behavior thing, whereas the heel walking is more of an obedience thing. So sometimes they overlap a little bit, but when addressing behavior, we want to make sure that we're directly addressing the issue rather than just kind of putting a command over it. Just because then we're not actually going to see progress that's happening like in her head. It's more just going to be she's doing this other command and just happens not to be doing this other thing. So with the reactivity, that's something that, again, having the heel command will help with a little bit. But what we would be basically trying to do is when we see her in these situations where she's going to be escalating, or another dog's walking by or anything like that, we wouldn't necessarily want to avoid it completely. We would give space and everything, to make sure everything's safe. But when she's starting to build that tension, then we would correct that kind of buildup that she's having. So we would want to kick in with the e-collar before she has like a moment where she goes and runs after this dog, because we want her to understand that this tension that you're building, there's no reason for it. Nothing's happening. This is not a good thing. So then we correct that. And then she's like, okay, well, I'm not going to build this tension anymore. I'm not going to do this. So then what's the only thing that she can do is just sit there, wait for the dog to pass. And like, it doesn't matter basically. So through doing that, that's where we can probably see a lot of progress, where she's not concerned with every single dog, because if she gets too caught up, then she's just going to get corrected if she's all amped up trying to go after this dog. So the only other thing is like, I don't care about this dog. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then that would apply to like anything she's having issues with as far as the reactivity. So whether it be like another small animal or something that she's like locked in on, then it's the same thing. We're just basically keeping her from getting to that higher end, like 10 out of 10 level. And we just are keeping her at like a 4 or 5 out of 10 when we're on the walk and everything, just because she doesn't need to be at that intense level. Nothing is happening just because the dog walks by you. And then for the stuff in the home, a lot of that would be the same idea, except now we're just correcting the excitement. So same thing, what we would probably recommend once you start the program and everything is, you would collar her up like 30 minutes before you have guests come over. And then that way, any excitement that she's building, like, okay, I get it, you're happy, that's fine. But then maybe she gets to like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. All right, now that's too much. So then we correct, and then she's back at a 6, and you're like, okay, this is fine. And as your guests are coming in, you would just correct that excitement. And if it becomes an issue past that, then there's a few different methods that we have, such as like just having like a mental barrier at the door, where like, I know if she goes past this point, then I'm going to have to correct, because just don't rush the door if somebody's coming in. So there's different ways to go about that, but it's all pretty straightforward. The way that I would think about it is that in the same way you give treats and food and stuff as a reward, and you're basically saying like, yes, I like that you did this, so I'm going to give you a treat. For the e-collar, it'd basically just be adding a correction to just say, no, I don't like that you did this, or you shouldn't be doing this right now. So then you can kind of have much more full communication by having yes and no.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Any questions so far with any of that?
No, seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. Did you, or here, let me ask you this. What would you say your goals look like with Nova, like at the end of training? Like, what would your day-to-day life look like if she was all trained up to the degree what you want and everything was looking good?
I would definitely feel much better taking her everywhere with me because I wouldn't have to worry with her pulling or wanting to say hi to somebody or, you know.
Yeah.
Because usually when we go to doctor's appointments, I usually come out very like sweaty, you know, because of how I have to stop her from going everywhere, sniffing everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. As far as commands, are you pretty much just looking for like the basic like heal and recall, or are you interested in getting like more commands under your belt where it would be like a like the place command? I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where you say place and they go to, like, let's say you make their dog bed place. So then when you say that, she goes over to her dog bed. She can do whatever she likes on the dog bed. And then when you release her, then she can hop off and stuff. So there's more like advanced stuff, but it's just to what degree are you looking to advance things with her?
I mean, the more the better, to be honest, because I feel like that's what she needs.
Okay. And then as far as the intensity of the training, are you looking for more of that like full off leash reliability with all the commands, or are you looking for more just like short leash reliability and then maybe doing like a little bit of long leash, or to what level are you trying to get her there?
Probably the full leash, I would say.
Like off leash?
Yeah, off leash. Yeah.
Okay. Okie dokie. Any other questions or anything with this training before I go into more of like the type of programs and everything?
Would this also help with like barking and stuff like that? Because
so does she bark a lot in the house?
Yeah.
Okay. That can be addressed pretty easily. It just depends how you're wanting to go about it. So some people like a little bit of barking, but when they say stop, then that's enough. Some people just don't want them barking in the house at all. So what would you say that like you would be trying to go for more there?
The stop command.
Okay. So to do that, it's pretty straightforward. That would be what we would call like more control of that specific behavior versus like elimination. So with that, let's say she's barking, you would then give her a verbal command of however you would, whatever word you'd want to say. Some people say stop, some people say quiet, whatever word. We'll say stop for now. So she starts barking, you say stop. And then if she continues barking past that point of you saying stop, then you just kick in with the consequence of the e-collar. So that way she understands, okay, stop is kind of my warning, but if I keep barking past that, well, then they're going to follow up with the e-collar. So over time, she should just understand that, okay, when I hear stop, that means I should just stop. But that doesn't mean she can't like bark again, just until she hears the word.
Okay.
But yeah, the other thing would be like, if she's doing something in the house that you want to completely get rid of, then you wouldn't say anything. You would just do consequence right away. So that way she understands like, okay, I just don't do that. There's no warning or anything. That's just something I don't do. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the programs, did you guys have a chance to look at them at all, or do you know like what type of like training and stuff like that you might be interested in?
Yeah, I saw the 12-week, but I think that's onboarding for like 1,700 around there.
I think I don't necessarily know all the prices off the top of my head.
Yeah, because my sister's husband, her niece, did the program with you guys, and I saw the dog at family parties, and he was very like relaxed. He was just in his bed. They had like a little bed for him, and he was just
okay.
and I asked her where she went, and she gave me like the link for you guys. So she told me she did the 12-week onboarding training.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a part of our in-person programs, especially for dogs with like some behavior stuff like reactivity, or how you said like it could even be possible aggression. Then in person is recommended, just so that way you're there, you can see how to handle the dog yourself, just because you're going to have to be dealing with those situations when you take Nova home anyways.
Yeah.
So I would recommend in person definitely. And then I'll give you like a range that you can kind of stay within. So you can go for 12 weeks if you want to like do like the full off leash thing. If you're wanting to still make like a lot of progress, but not necessarily do like the top like 12-week program, I would say at the very least, let me think. So at the very least, I would say the 6-week program. And then you can do 8-week for, more control, more commands and stuff like that. And then 12-week would be trying to get to that full off leash reliability, within that like range and everything. So I wouldn't go any lower than 6, just so that way you have enough time to get your basic commands down and address the behavior stuff. But then anything past that, it's up to you how advanced you want to like take it.
Okay.
And then as far as the e-collar goes, just because of the reactivity stuff, I'll say that I'll probably recommend the 1900S Black Edition right now. You don't have to necessarily remember that because it'll be in a follow-up email. But that's just one that we usually recommend to any of our like behavior cases, just so that way you have a good range to work with. And then for that, with whatever training you guys end up going with, you can either purchase that on your own, or we are a dog tour retailer, so we can have it ready at your first lesson that you would attend with Nova. So that way it could just be there good to go when you show up. But that's also just up to you, however you'd like to do it. And then was there anything else that you had as far as questions for the program or the e-collar or anything like that?
No.
Okay. For the in-person program, I would most likely recommend Enrique, just because he's a little bit cheaper than Jesse, and he still knows how to handle all these cases and everything. For example, Nova is a dog that, like a type of dog that he's handled before. So you wouldn't have any issues with that. So if you're just wanting to save a little bit of money there, otherwise you can go with Jesse. He's just going to be a little bit more expensive, and I'm not necessarily sure what the differences in their schedules are. So right now, I'll just recommend Enrique, but if you want to switch, you can always do that. It's really up to you. Anything else that you feel like you need maybe more of an explanation on, or anything else that you were curious about maybe?
Does the program also help with her biting things, because she does tend to do that too?
Okay. Like, can you give me a scenario?
Well, she just pretty much bites like her blankets or the carpet, and
Okay.
her dog bed too.
Okay. Like just randomly throughout the day, or like when you're not home, or
Yeah, when I'm not home.
okay. Um, do you notice her getting like stressed or anything when you guys are leaving, or does she start to get more like
Yeah,
anxious?
barking and anxious when we leave, and then we come, and then the carpet's either bitten or.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that to me sounds like a little bit of, I would say, like separation anxiety, where
Mhm.
she knows you guys are leaving and then you leave, and then her anxiety is just building, building, building. So then she's redirecting that, um, that like those anxious feelings towards chewing on the carpet or chewing on her bed or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, for that, that is again like more of a specific behavior thing. So, do you guys like use a crate with her, or does she have a crate?
She does, but she doesn't use it.
Okay. Um, how is she like when you have put her in the crate in the past?
Um, at first she was barking a lot, but then she started getting used to it. But then I just stopped putting her in the crate and just let her sleep on like the couch or her dog bed somewhere
Hmm.
in the living room, just because I felt bad. So
Okay. So for addressing the separation anxiety, one of the first things that we'll most likely have you do is to start using the crate a little bit more, just to dial back some of that extra freedom that she has. So that way, we can get her more comfortable with being in the crate, for example, when you're going to be out of the house. Because for now, while she's biting stuff and everything like that, we would probably want you to kettle her when you're going to be leaving, especially for longer amounts of time, just so that way she doesn't have a chance of doing that, which is one, going to reinforce the behavior because she's going to keep getting the stress and then keep redirecting towards these different things to chew. And she's gonna be getting in her head that like, oh, every time that they leave, I freak out and then I chew this thing and it's okay, like nothing happens. So we don't want that behavior to continue necessarily. And then we also don't want it to continue because maybe one day she chews something that could be dangerous for her.
yeah.
So we would probably have you use the crate more. And then if she's having some like anxiety in the crate, then we can implement the e-collar there to start addressing that separation anxiety. Because a lot of that is just because one, she wants to be out of the crate, maybe she wants to be next to you guys and hanging out and stuff like that. But she also needs to learn how to kind of be alone and be able to work through that anxiety that she is kind of building up. So with that, very similar to like the other things, as her anxiety is building, we would uh, look for the signs that she's getting more and more amped up, and then we correct that to let her know that these anxious feelings that you're having in the kennel are like not good. You shouldn't be having them. And then since she has nothing else to do really, then she should kind of make that decision to, all right, I'm just going to chill out because if I can't like be anxious, if I'm not getting out of the kennel, what else can I do is just lay down really. And that's also going to help inside the home when you guys are leaving and stuff down the road if she's out of the kennel, because now we've already started teaching her that this anxiety stuff is not good for her basically.
Right.
Um, any questions with that, or does that make sense?
No, it makes sense.
Okay. But
I have
yeah,
a question.
yeah, you're good.
By crate, you mean a cage or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just a standard cage.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and then yeah, for that, that would be more of like an in-home session most likely. Especially if you guys are having more of the trouble like at home and all that.
Yeah.
And that's not like an issue. You could just make like one of your classes like an in-home session. And then you guys will work on whatever you need to work on, the same way you would if you were doing your in-person lesson here at the facility or anything. Um, and then with that, I would say if you're wanting to address all that behavior stuff, and then do more than like the recall and heal command, then you might be looking at more of like the 8-week, 12-week range. But if you're cool with like just the heal and recall command, then you can still do the 6-week comfortably. So that's more up to you.
Okay.
I was wondering, how come Jesse's service is a little bit more expensive than Enrique?
Okay.
Does he have more years of experience, or?
Yeah, he's been doing it longer. He specializes in like the intensely like aggressive dogs that we get, to where they're like more on the dangerous end. So Enrique still does some of that, but Jesse usually takes like all the most difficult cases, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, he's been doing it for I think he's been doing it for like 10 plus years. But both of them are good, but at the end of the day, it is up to you, and whichever one you go with, you know, you'll definitely be able to see the results. So if you prefer Jesse, then you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Okay.
Any other questions with that?
No.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'll get these recommendations in an email, and for now, I'll send it over to Enrique's assistant. She can still set you up with Jesse and everything if that's what you want to do. So there's not really a big difference there. But you'll get an email from her. I think her email is going to be like Tina@Canine Perspective.
Yeah.
And then the e-collar recommendation will be in there. The program recommendations will be in there. And she can help you with any scheduling that you might be looking at, any like payment plans, if that's something that you're needing to do as well. And then any other questions that you have or about the training or the program or anything, you can feel free to ask her. And if it's something she doesn't know, if it's more training specific, then she'll just have either myself, Enrique, or Jesse respond to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okie dokie. Any other like final questions or anything? Or does that all sound good?
Wait, wow, where's your facility at, or the training?
Yeah, we are at 2926 West Lake Street.
Oh, where's that, in Addison?
Yeah, it's like what's the other street? Like Western and Lake. So it's a little bit more south, kind of like by, what would the area be called? Like below Humboldt Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But another thing I'll mention is that depending on when you guys do the program, we also do the training outside if the weather's nice enough. So then we usually go to Oz Park in Lincoln Park over there, or Palmer Square Park in Logan Square. So depending on when you guys are deciding to do the training, those can also be options as well.
It's a one-on-one training, or is there more people there?
It'll be one-on-one. So the in-person is always going to be like for example, like you two would show up with Nova, and then it would be with like just Enrique or just Jesse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes the park is just more realistic, like experience for the dog. So if the weather's nice, then we will usually do that over being at the facility.
Yeah.
Any other questions or anything?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll go ahead and get this follow-up email going, so just keep an eye out for that. And then other than that, I look forward to seeing Nova train with us. And then I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.